Welcome back to another episode of our Ten Commandments series. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Yes, today's focus is particularly compelling as we tackle Commandment 4. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
You know, when we hear the word Sabbath, it often conjures images of Sunday services or Saturday resting, but it's so much deeper than that.
Absolutely, the Sabbath is more than a day. It's a divine design for rest, renewal, and worship. And what's interesting is that the command begins with the word remember. It's as if God anticipated that we'd forget amidst our busy lives.
That strikes me. The idea of remembering implies that this isn't just a suggestion, but a fundamental aspect of life that we need to prioritize. God worked for 6 days and rested on the seventh, and by doing so, he blessed and made that day holy. It's the foundation of the rhythm of creation itself.
Right? So it's essential to consider that this command isn't exclusive. Everyone is included. Children, servants, even outsiders were invited into this rhythm of rest. God cares about everybody finding space to pause.
And this leads us to a profound realization. Practicing Sabbath is an act of trust. When I take that pause, I'm declaring that God governs the universe, not me. It's powerful to admit that the world won't collapse if I take some time off.
That's such a countercultural statement. In a society that often glorifies hustle and busyness, to choose to engage in the Sabbath seems almost rebellious. It reminds us that our worth isn't tied to productivity, but rather to simply being in God's presence.
Exactly. It feeds into this misconception that taking a break is laziness, which couldn't be further from the truth. Honoring the Sabbath is, in fact, an act of obedience to God's design for our lives. It's about embracing freedom from burnout.
What a quite liberating thought. The Sabbath as a gift rather than a burden. It's like asking ourselves, are we willing to receive that gift? Are we allowing God to teach us to rest, renew, and focus on what really matters?
Let's pause here and consider. What does our own rhythm of work and rest signal about where our trust lies? Are we caught up in busyness that distracts us from what truly matters?
Great questions. Sabbath practice challenges us to reflect on our lives. For instance, how might intentionally taking time to rest transform our relationships with God and each other? And do we view rest as a weakness or as an act of faith?
These reflections can lead us to practical changes too. What specific steps can we take this week to cultivate a sacred rhythm of Sabbath in our lives? It's about finding what works personally.
And let's not forget the historical context. The Old Covenant established the Sabbath on the seventh day, which in biblical tradition is Saturday. It became codified in the Ten Commandments in Exodus 20.
That's right. But what's interesting is how the early church began meeting on Sundays to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, considering it a new beginning, a beautiful shift in focus.
And here's where it gets even deeper. The book of Hebrews teaches us that Jesus is viewed as the ultimate rest, the fulfillment of what the Sabbath means. This is the true liberation. When we embrace him, we find our rest.
To think about it, worship isn't confined to a specific day either. Jesus reminds us in John 4 that God desires worship done in spirit and truth, not bound merely by time or tradition.
That's an empowering thought. While taking rest aligns with wisdom, our salvation and worship relationship in Christ transcends specific days. Our connection with God is about living a life rested in his grace.
It reminds me of a beautiful comment someone made. The Sabbath points to Jesus. Whether it's Saturday, Sunday, or any day, what truly matters is finding our rest and worshiping in spirit and truth.
So let's ask our listeners, how can we remember the Sabbath, keep it holy, and rediscover the blessing of rest in God? What aspects of your own life could use a little Sabbath spirit?
To wrap this all up, let's reflect on the idea that rest doesn't equate to laziness, but is a declaration of trust in God's providence. Sabbath isn't a burden, but a rich gift rooted in his design. It's about taking time to recalibrate our lives towards what is truly significant.
Exactly. And let's challenge ourselves to explore what it means to keep it holy, not just from a set of rules, but from a heart posture, embracing the freedom that comes from resting in him.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you leave inspired to engage with this sacred rhythm together with us next week.